Welcome back to The Favorite Teacher. This is a show where I highlight people who are creating great educational content for their audience and position themselves as favorite teachers. And today I have Marcus with me, and he does a great job of creating educational content in the legal space. So, Marcus, you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, well, thanks, James. Thanks for having me on. Uh, my name is Marcus Harris. I'm an attorney. I work at a large law firm called Taft, Stettinius and Hollister. I work out of the Chicago office, and for I'd say over 20 years or so, I've been practicing in the ERP software space, and I really focus my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts, and then litigating large ERP digital transformation failures in courts and before arbitration panels across the country. And unfortunately, the rate of failure is relatively high with those types of projects. And so it's something that really keeps us busy and something we really enjoy doing.
Awesome, thank you. So, as part of creating your content, you kind of have to have an audience or students who are receiving the educational content that you're creating. So, who are your customers, or who's the audience for the content that you're creating?
Well, I think it's pretty broad based, but I mean, really the point of our content is really at least twofold or maybe threefold. I think you could probably fairly say. And one, we're reaching out to people that are certainly interested in the ERP space, the ERP contracting space, want to get information about how to negotiate these contracts, and then understand the litigation process and the risks and the risk mitigation associated with that. So, all of that is kind of rolled up into one. And I think the audience for that really, it's students are one audience, certainly law students. And I think the primary audience though is, I would say, companies that have at least $50 million in revenue and are looking to acquire a brand new software system for their business and ERP system. And then also companies that are going through a challenging implementation project and are trying to have an understanding of when to throw in the towel and then what their options are.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think, and this is my personal experience too, and I love business law. I always enjoyed those classes during business school, but I also learned quickly that it goes much more over my head. And I'm looking at some of our past clients who are dealing with implementing software, and it becomes this massive burden to try and understand these contracts and understand what you can and can't do. And I just noticed the content you're creating does a really good job of breaking things that was down, educating people, kind of helping them understand the basics. Obviously, you guys do much deeper stuff when it comes to the actual legal work you're doing, I'm assuming, but giving people that initial trust and like comfort level around some of these topics, I find super valuable. And now one of the ways you do it is video. And maybe the good next topic would be, how do you create that content? How do you think about the content you're creating, what kind of content you're creating, as well as how are you actually going through the process of creating it?
Yeah, I really like video because I think what it does is it forces you to take these difficult concepts, these legal concepts, and really get them down to their base components and talk about it. You're forced to talk about it at somewhat of a high level so that it's easily accessible and easily understandable. So the medium itself, I think, drives the type of content that we are creating, and it precludes you in some ways, and I think there's good things and there's bad things to this, from getting tremendously into the weeds because one, I think you have to be super interested in certain nuances and the legal technicalities of this stuff to want to get into the weeds. And there's a time and place for that, which would really be, kind of a continuing legal education presentation or something like that to the right audience. This is essentially geared towards lay people. And so, that's the audience that we have in mind. And really, it's practical approaches to how do you deal with these issues? How do you engage these vendors and come out on the other side unscathed? That's really driving the presentation, the content generation. And, there's no real shortcut. I mean, you got to sit down, think about what topics you think are going to be interesting to your audience, what things are easy to explain. Some of the just topics that are arising in the news or that are technology driven, like artificial intelligence, for example. You don't have a choice sometimes to pick and choose things that are easy to talk about. Sometimes you're forced to talk about things that are highly sophisticated. But again, the medium really drives kind of the spin on the topics and the content that we're putting out there, because it really has to be consumed in an easily to understand way. And so you've got to break down these technical concepts and make them presentable to really the widest audience that you're gearing your content towards.
Yeah, I love that you also called out the fact that you're keeping it high level. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with when they start creating content is they jump into wanting to explain on a very deep level, right? Let's say we can't talk about this and not mention these five other things, right? And if you are that expert in your industry, a lot of times you have to almost think of your content as like that, basic 101 level style content, and then people can dig deeper. But you also called out a good point too, that the medium can make a big difference. If you were writing blog articles, you could write a 1,200 page blog article, or word blog article. But if you're doing a 60-second video, you have to quickly snap off some definitions, explain why it matters, and then move on from there too. So I think that's a really good point to call out, and something I think is really important, because again, you're in the legal space where things get super complicated, and we have other customers or other people to talk to who might be in something like manufacturing, other B2B services, and they feel like they can't dumb it down enough for their audience. But really, it is like, what are the most important things that you need to teach, and how can you leave that impactful education on your audience? As you look at your content you've created now, how do you see it affecting your business? How's it helped your law firm? How's it helped you grow your practice in particular?
That's a really good question. And it's attorneys, certainly, we're experts in a legal field, but at a certain point in your career, depending on where you practice, if you practice in an outside law firm, commercial oriented law, you really are selling services. And at some point in your career, you have to make a transition from being the person that is spending their day kind of doing the busy work, to the person that's doing the strategy, and the person that is pitching the services and figuring out a way to generate business, because unfortunately that's the kind of the name of the game, is that you're always trying to generate revenue for your business. And really, the video, I think, is probably the one thing that we have done that is almost has a direct one-to-one relationship between generating leads and the effort that we put into it. And what I mean by that is, there's a direct reaction. What we post videos, and it's not every video, and it's not within days necessarily, but definitely there is an uptick in business development activity, clients calling, clients inquiring, and it's directly related to the videos that we're putting out, the educational content. And you've also got to understand there's kind of a halo effect associated with this, because one, the videos drive SEO. So there's more people coming to your other types of content, to your bio, to your blog posts. The videos are showing up in Google and other search engines, and that's all incredibly important. You need to have people calling you about the services that you're providing. But the halo effect really is that people get to know you, they get to like you, and more importantly, they get to trust you, right? So you can't really conceptualize this as selling, even though that's essentially what it is. It's educating your audience and talking about what you do, because there certainly the core audience that you're targeting is never going to know as much about what you do as you do, and there's going to be value in what you talk about. That should be the goal. The goal is to put out valuable content that people can learn from. And then the secondary halo effect of that is that they call you and they want more information, and they ask you to help them. And they only do that by understanding that you actually know what you're talking about. And so the video has the effect of taking you from kind of a one-dimensional brochure on a website somewhere, with a bio and representative cases and that kind of thing to a living, breathing person. They understand how you're going to interact. They understand how you're going to lead a negotiation. They're going to understand how you do a presentation to a jury, all from the way that you present yourself on video. So for an attorney, video is a dynamic medium. It's an important medium, and I think if you're not doing it, you're really missing out, because you're leaving business on the table, so to speak.
I love that you call it out, because I think people think of this stuff sometimes as selling, like you're saying, or even as marketing, right? And as you said, anybody could go put an ad up or put up a billboard, and technically that could generate leads for you. But this type of strategy not only generates the leads by increasing your visibility, but as you called out, it also increased trust. And that trust is what turns into people actually wanting to buy from you. And you're aligning yourself with the right kind of people too. I think you brought up that point that people will understand what you're going to be like when you're working with them. And that might turn off some people, but in a lot of ways, it might bring the right types of clients to you too, because they like the way you're talking, they like the way you're teaching them and doing these things. And it's almost like you're aligning yourself with the right type of client that will be good for you and your firm. So let's say someone's inspired by all this and they want to get started with creating educational content. What would be a tip that you'd give them, or a strategy you'd say would be good for beginners?
Well, I mean, I think there's two things that come to mind, and one is you really want to have an understanding of who your audience is. Okay, who are you reaching out to? Who's your ideal client? What types of information are they going to be interested in learning about? What do they need to know to engage your services? What are the things that they're likely to encounter? That's kind of the first fundamental step, is identifying who you're talking to. And then I think you've got to have kind of this mentality of having just a conversation, right? If you look at my YouTube page, very early on, you organize videos by age. You can look at the very first videos we did. They're much different than the way that we do them today, and that's really just kind of an evolution of style. Certainly, just what's more popular today on the internet, but really just getting more comfortable and more conversational. And this should be, as you're on camera talking to somebody, it really should be as if you're talking to your best friend and explaining the issue to them as you would, as you're having a beer or something. I mean, my videos are a little bit more formal, but they're not that much more formal than that. And I think you do yourself a disservice if you've got a script and you've got a detailed outline of every point you want to make, and then you get flustered because you missed a point. The way that we approach this is you have an intro, you've got a topic. Basically, you've got 3 bullet points of issues that you want to make, or points you want to make about whatever you're talking about, and then you have a summary, and then you have your outro. So that there's a consistent formula to every one of the videos. It doesn't follow that exactly every time, but you've got to have some kind of guideposts so that when you get off track, because you inevitably do, you just have to keep going. And the more conversational it is, I think the better off you are. It's easier to do. You don't have to memorize a script. You know what you want to talk about generally, and you just kind of go. But that's the way we do it.
Those are awesome tips. And it's just funny because last week we had Dave on giving his advice, and he said something very similar to you too. And he was saying it took him probably 6 to 12 months to get that more comfortable conversational feel to his content. Because at first you do feel like you need to be very formal with the way you're doing things, but once he let his personality shine through, and speak more like a conversational tone, like you're saying, that's when he really saw his content take off, both from an engagement standpoint, but also visibility side of things. I think that has a lot to do with what people are consuming on social media today too, is they don't want branded marketing content. They want to learn from someone who's got a personality and is helping them in that process. And I like that you called out too, understanding that ideal customer persona, because that really is true, right? If you're the favorite teacher, who's your favorite student? How are you writing curriculum to them? If you're kind of thinking in that teaching mindset, how are you teaching that student? And you have to know your student where they're at before you get started. So thanks for those awesome tips. Thanks for joining me today, Marcus. I really appreciate it. If people want to check out your content and check out your firm, where should they go to?
Yeah, if you want to check out my content, you can find me on LinkedIn, Marcus Harris, software attorney. We're also on YouTube, Marcus Harris, software attorney. Easy to find stuff. My law firm's website is taftlaw.com. You can find me there. But really, it's the social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and all those. But pretty easy to find. And we'd love for you to check out our content and interact with us, and look forward to seeing you there.
Great, perfect. I'll link to all those in the description below here too. So thanks again, Marcus. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Good talking to you.